Josh and I run Cigarette Burns. Thank you all for coming down to House of Mortal Sin, part of the House of Walker for retrospective. Next week we've got Hula Carol with Matthew Sweet introducing, and then the following week it's House of Whipcord with Pete Walker himself down and Jonathan Rigby, followed by Frightmare on 35 with Jonathan Rigby again. I'd like to just introduce Kim Newman and longtime collaborator with Pete Walker himself, David McGillivray.
Welcome. I'm Kim Newman. This is David McGillivray, the man in the blue suit. So, all these years on, here we are in one of the most respectable cinemas in London, a bastion of culture, a temple to the arts, and we're watching House of Mortal Sin, a film you wrote for £800 in 1973. So, how does it feel?
Well, this has come as an enormous surprise. When Josh mooted this some months ago, I may even have said, well, this will never happen, because there's surely not enough interest in these films which most people have forgotten. So it's a thrill to be here. I could have sworn, even up until last week, this would have been cancelled.
And I understand, though, you say you can't bear to look at this film again.
No, I won't be watching it.
Even though you haven't seen it since the premiere.
No, I saw it at the. I must have seen it at the cast and crew screening, and I decided then I never wanted to see it again.
So how did it go down with the cast and crew?
I can't honestly remember. I was so toe-curlingly embarrassed that I was probably unaware of anyone else's reactions. I mean, I have to say, it's because of my awful script that I can't bear to look at this film, or indeed any of the others. I was very fond of my own voice at that time. Are we talking sort of mid-70s?
Yeah.
So I would just write screeds and screeds of this dialogue, which I just don't want to listen to. Thank you.
So how did you get involved with Pete Walker's cinema in the first place? This is your third collaboration with him? Yeah.
That's right, yes. Prior to this, there was House of Whipcord, which will be here at the end of the month, and then Frightmare. And this one was a bit more difficult to put together. I met Pete because I interviewed him. I think that was in 1971. And in those days, the independent film industry was very small, and everyone knew each other. So writers like myself would be passed around, and I'd done
like groupies.
Yes, kind of. And sometimes there was sex involved. Yes. I'd done a film for a mutual friend of ours called Ray Self, and so he passed me on to Pete Walker.
And in the run of films you did with Walker, it seems that each film knocks off a particular offensive subject. So, first one is crime and punishment and S&M and flagellation. Next one, more legal wranglings, cannibalism, family values, incest, and mad psychotherapy. What was your brief for this one?
Well, as I say, we had a bit of a struggle putting this one together. Prior to this, I just phoned him up and said cannibalism, and I think we got a story for that within probably a couple of days, so that was quite easy. And this, of course, was probably about 8 years before the cannibal holocaust of the 80s, so that really was groundbreaking, and therefore a difficult subject to top, and I had not an idea in my head, and so Pete gave me a pulp novel about a killer vicar and said, if we change it sufficiently. You
You
know,
won't have to pay for the rights.
you took the words out of my mouth. And I read it and didn't really like it enormously. But also, I'm pretty sure I said to him, you know, Vickers are figures of fun, and this is going to get unintentional laughs. Probably I suggested turning the vicar into a priest, because in those days, priests, we're going back now, quite a way, were like Caesar's wife above suspicion.
Yeah.
No one.
In horror films in the 70s, priests were good guys. They were like The Exorcist, weren't they?
Quite,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And it was John Landis who later said that if his kid had any problems, the last thing he'd do is lock them in a bedroom with a couple of priests.
Well, we thought we were going to cause a lot of controversy having a killer priest, and it came as an enormous disappointment that the critics didn't think it was a controversial film at all. They just thought it was dreadful.
So you didn't even get the cries of blasphemy that Margaret Thatcher, Mary Whitehouse was very keen on slinging around in the 70s and 80s. The Life of Brian, Gay News, all those people got tarnished for blasphemy, and you just walked on it. Yeah, no.
We thought it was going to be a dead cert. Yes, yes. So that was a shock. Yeah.
So do you think you just weren't offensive enough?
Apparently not. And I can remember sitting with Pete Walker thinking, now what can we do that's even more offensive than this last murder? I can't remember the film, but possibly the first one. Was it Strangulation with Rosary Beads? And we were deliberately trying to do this. And I was at that time living in Kilburn, which was known then as County Kilburn. It had an enormous Irish population. And so to do the research, I was able to go to the biggest Catholic church in England, I think, without telling them exactly why I needed the information. And I did go to a service. I knew nothing about Catholicism at all. Pete Walker is Catholic, I'm not. And so I just, stood up and sat down when I thought I should, and there was this censer, this burning thing that the priest swings, and I thought, oh, somebody can be hit over the head with that, can't they? These are all, I should have had spoiler alert.
So, were you involved at all in the casting of this film?
No, I was never involved in casting. We always had to go through a ritual where Pete would tell me which stars of yesteryear were going to be in it, and I went along with that. Was this going to be Peter Cushing? It usually was. So he would say, yes, this is, he was going to play this part, and then it would be Peggy Cummins or Pat Kirkwood, but I think Sheila Keith was always in line for the housekeeper, and I think it was written for her. By that time, she was popular.
Yeah, she'd become the as it were, the breakout star of these films.
The only one, yes, a mature scream queen, and he did like her. He liked working with her very much. So this was written for her.
And Anthony Sharp, how many names down the list do you have to get to reach Anthony Sharp?
A lot.
Not that he's bad in this, I got to say, but he's not even in the realms of people who are fans of obscure British character actors. He's the minister at the end of A Clockwork Orange, isn't he? And I saw him get killed by an alien in Unearthly Stranger this week. But those are the kind of roles he got. Sort of distinguished establishment figure who's like fifth around the table. So for him, this is must have been his breakout lead role after a long career as third or fourth banana.
Even he didn't want to do it. I can't remember how many people turned it down after Peter Cushing, but the thing is that Anthony Sharp had worked for Pete Walker before, so that's why his name was put into the hat. But he was just appalled by the script and must have been desperate, I suppose. It was a lead. I don't think he'd ever had such a big part before. There's an old lady in it called Hilda Barry, and I think it was her last film, and apparently she said to Pete Walker after she finished, "I'm going to ask forgiveness for doing this film."
And have you asked forgiveness?
I just don't care. I was still having a moderate amount of fun at this time working with Pete Walker, and I only have happy memories of the actual work. After this film, things got very difficult between Pete Walker and myself, but that was the following year.
Yeah. So that was on Schizo.
It was, yes.
The Let It Be of the McGillivray Walker collaborations, the put together on the roof until the police shut you down version.
Very nicely put, Kim. Now everyone's going to want to see that film. Yes, that was an awful experience, and basically we never spoke again. I met Pete Walker again in 1992 at a convention in Manchester, I think, and that didn't go down awfully well. And that was it. 22 years. I haven't seen him since then.
And you seen any residuals from the many re-releases?
No, of course I haven't. No.
Well, I'm now going to do the obligatory thing of throwing it open to the audience for questions. This is his only appearance at this screening, so if you've got anything to ask him, get him now. He's probably never going to talk about this stuff again because it's too painful. So.
I told you there'd be no questions.
I see a hand creeping up there.
Well, two things. One, I think it's a brilliant film. It's one of my absolute favourite films, and all three of those films are superb. My question is, I think the working title is something like Mass Murder. And
that was my title, yes. I loved thinking up titles. And I said, this has got to be called Mass Murder, surely. He thought it was too clever.
No, it's a tragedy. It should have been called Mass Murder.
And then it was The Confessional for a while, and then House of Mortal Sin, which kind of doesn't mean anything, really.
I didn't know what that meant at all. I didn't know what Mortal Sin was.
Was there
I had to look it up.
Did he want to have a kind of house series going?
Yes, I think even in those days he was thinking in terms of posterity, and even this season is called House of Walker, so he's done it.
So you didn't go with House of Frightmare and House of Schizo?
Frightmare was going to be House of Depravity.
I quite like that. It would have certainly been good for those reissue double bills. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's actually, I personally prefer it to Frightmare, and I think it's one of the best horror films of the 70s. Probably because I was singing in a choir at the time, not alive.
Why?
Well, if you've been singing in a choir at the time, you'd know.
You're prejudiced.
But if you were still making films, I know you are still making films, if you're still making films with Pete Walker, and you wanted to do a kind of controversial subject now, and I know he kind of claims to be in favour of capital punishment, and it might be the other way around. What would you do if you were doing something now?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because only last week I met Robert Tayman, who's the villain in House of Whipcord, and he contacted me through Facebook. And today, in fact, he's at a big convention in Westminster, selling his...
Sorry, just now.
Yes?
That's where I've just come from.
He was there.
He was there.
Well, we had breakfast, and jokingly I said, what would you think to House of Whipcord 2? And not only is he up for it, but he told me the first scene. So maybe that will be the film. It won't. It's a fantasy. But as far as I know, Pete Walker will never make another film. He's very determined.
Whereas you just had your biggest hit film open. So tell us about the premiere you had last night of the movie that you financed and produced and created all by yourself, that presumably you are willing to watch again?
Yes. Well, not too many times. I've seen it a few times. This is Peter Jerome, grandfather of gay porn, and it's a documentary I'm very proud of because I was a great admirer of Peter's work, and we managed to make this film about him just before he died. And it was at the Hackney Picture House this week, and it's going all over the world. So, I mean, I never had any success from any of the horror films at all, but this film, suddenly, at my age, 67, it's a big hit, so it's a thrill for me, yes.
Yeah. And are you going to continue in your role of documentary producer?
Yes. It's much, much easier than making fiction films. It's very cheap, you don't have to pay anyone, and I've got lots of plans, yes.
So what's your next subject?
Well, I didn't prime Kim with any of these questions. It sounds as though, he just wants me to plug my films, which is not true. But this is an interesting story, actually. Peter Jerome knew everybody when he was working, including John Gielgud. And Sir John was so impressed with Peter's work, which of course was porn, that he wrote Peter a screenplay. Now nobody knows anything about this script. It's not mentioned in the John Gielgud letters, it's not mentioned in the biographies. It's an unknown script, John Gielgud's only screenplay. So next year we are going to make that, yes.
What, John Gielgud's gay porn movie?
Yeah. I mean, The Guardian and the Indie are just going to go weak at the knee.
So what's it called?
It's called Trouser Bar. John Gielgud was obsessed with men in trousers. He loved corduroy and leather, and so he wrote a film set in a menswear shop. And my plan is to, because Peter, like Pete Walker, didn't want to make any more films, it's going to be directed by Kristen Bjorn, who is kind of the Peter Jerome of the 21st century. The John Gielgud estate is furious, and they won't let us do it, but they haven't got a leg to stand on. So they're going to be very upset about this, but we've got the BFI behind us.
So, any more questions? Okay. One last question, and then we have to show a film.
A bit of a come down after John Gielgud's trouser fetish. But, I was wondering if you probably weren't present at shooting of House of Mortal Sin, but how did they persuade the church to let them murder people inside it?
It was a deconsecrated church, I remember that. And that's all I know. I know I didn't go there, and I have no idea where he found it. But he was marvellous at finding locations. We didn't make it easy, films set in a prison and so forth. He even managed to find one of those, or one that doubled as a prison for whipcord. And he was just ace at finding locations.
I have a similar experience in my life. I live in a deconsecrated police station, and after it was shut down, they shot a TV series there about police corruption, knowing that they could never get the real police to lend them a station. But as soon as they'd sold it off, it was too late. So. Right, anyway, so that's an irrelevant aside. But
I
now,
enjoyed it.
now for the first time,
I've heard it before.
in many years, let's have a look at House of Mortal Sin. Except
Thank you very much for coming.
not with David.
Thank you. Bye.
He's going home.